1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt was excavating a hill in southeastern Turkey. He expected to find a medieval cemetery. Instead, he found stone pillars, 11,000 years old, each weighing up to 15 tons, arranged in precise circles and built according to every model of human civilization that existed before that moment by people who should not have been able to build them. The hill is called Göbekli Tepe. In Turkish, the name means pot-belly hill. It sits on a limestone ridge overlooking the Harran Plain in what is now southeastern Turkey. From a distance, it looks unremarkable, a gentle rise in otherwise flat terrain. There is nothing about its appearance that suggests what lies beneath, which is perhaps why it remained hidden for so long. When Schmidt began excavating the site in 1994 under the auspices of the German Archaeological Institute, the scale of what he encountered took years to understand. Beneath the surface of the hill, beneath a layer of soil that, as it turned out, had been placed there deliberately, lay one of the oldest known ceremonial complexes on Earth. Massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some standing more than 5 meters tall, some weighing between 10 and 15 tons, arranged in circular enclosures facing inward towards each other, their surfaces carved with reliefs of animals, foxes, boars, snakes, vultures, scorpions, and other creatures whose significance archaeologists continue to debate. The craftsmanship is extraordinary, but the craftsmanship is not the mystery. The mystery is the date. Radiocarbon dating of organic material found at the site consistently places the oldest layers of Göbekli Tepe at approximately 11,000 to 12,000 years before the present. To understand what that number means, consider this. Stonehenge was built approximately 5,000 years ago. The Egyptian pyramids were built approximately 4,500 years ago. The earliest known writing systems emerged approximately 5,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe predates all of them by thousands of years. And here is what makes that date genuinely significant. 11,000 years ago, according to the archaeological consensus that existed before Göbekli Tepe was understood, human communities in this region were small mobile bands of hunter-gatherers. They moved with the seasons. They did not build permanent structures. They did not have the surplus food production, the centralized organization, or the specialized labor that monumental construction was assumed to require. Yet here, on a limestone ridge in southeastern Turkey, someone quarried enormous stone blocks from outcrops approximately 300 meters from the site. Someone transported them. Someone raised them. Someone carved them with skill that, even by later standards, is remarkable. And someone organized whatever community of people was required to do all of this. Not once, but repeatedly. Across what Schmidt estimated as potentially dozens of enclosures constructed over a period of perhaps 1,000 years or more. Schmidt, who devoted the remainder of his career to this site until his death in 2014, described Göbekli Tepe in his published papers as evidence that organized religion, or at least organized collective ceremony, may have predated rather than followed the development of agriculture. That the need to come together for shared purpose may have been what drove early humans to settle, to farm, and to build permanent communities, not the other way around. That single revision to the archaeological model, supported by the physical evidence at Göbekli Tepe, and debated, refined, and expanded by researchers across the 2 decades since, changed the way prehistorians think about the origins of human civilization. And it raised a question that the site itself cannot answer. If organized construction was possible 11,000 years ago, if the social coordination required to move 15-ton stones and carve precise animal reliefs was present this early in the human story, what else might be waiting under an ordinary-looking hill somewhere on Earth? Archaeologists are still asking that question. Some of the answers found so far are even harder to explain. But before we travel to the next site, before we cross from Turkey to South America and then across the Pacific, there is one more detail about Göbekli Tepe that most accounts leave out. At some point, archaeologists estimate approximately 8,000 years ago, the people who used this site stopped using it. They did not abandon it. They did not let it fall to ruin. They buried it deliberately. They filled every enclosure with soil, rubble, and debris. They covered their own monument, and then they left. No text explains why. No inscription describes the decision. The burial preserved the site perfectly. It may be the reason it survived, but the reason it was buried. What happened? What changed? What the people who built this place were thinking when they chose to cover it remains one of the most genuinely unresolved questions in prehistoric archaeology. 12,000 kilometers from Göbekli Tepe, on the altiplano of what is now Bolivia, at an altitude of approximately 3,850 meters above sea level, lies a site that has generated more debate, more disagreement, and more competing explanations than almost any other ancient construction in South America. It is called Puma Punku. It was part of the broader Tiwanaku complex, a pre-Columbian civilization that flourished in the region between approximately 500 and 1000 CE. What makes Puma Punku distinctive, and what makes it the subject of ongoing archaeological analysis, is its stonework. Specifically, what the stonework requires us to believe about the people who made it. The blocks scattered across the site today, many now broken or displaced from their original positions, are made primarily of red sandstone and andesite. Some of the larger blocks are estimated to weigh between 130 and 180 metric tons. Andesite, the harder of the two materials used, is not found locally. The nearest known andesite quarry is approximately 90 kilometers away, across terrain that includes water. How those blocks were transported to the site is not definitively established. But the cutting that attracts the most analytical attention. Researcher Jean-Pierre Protzen, who spent years studying Inca stonework and published detailed analysis of pre-Columbian construction techniques, documented that the precision of fitting at Tiwanaku-era sites, including Puma Punku, was achieved through a process of abrasion and trial fitting. Blocks were repeatedly ground against each other until their surfaces matched. The process is labor-intensive. It requires patience, generations of accumulated knowledge, and a community organized around the production and placement of stone. What the abrading and fitting process cannot easily explain, though, what continues to generate discussion in the archaeological literature is the consistency of certain geometric features across multiple blocks. Straight edges, right angles, recessed channels of consistent width, H-shaped blocks with interior dimensions that appear to match across separate pieces. The hypothesis that these features were produced with metal tools is complicated by the fact that the Tiwanaku did not appear to use iron tools of the type that would leave consistent marks in andesite at this level. The hypothesis that they were produced by stone-on-stone abrasion is supported by experimental archaeology, but challenged by the regularity of some features. The honest assessment, the one supported by the published archaeological literature rather than by either dismissal or sensationalism, is that the stoneworkers of Tiwanaku achieved a level of precision whose exact method remains incompletely understood. That is not a supernatural conclusion. It is an archaeological one. It means the people who built Puma Punku were more skilled, more organized, and more technically sophisticated than the popular account of pre-Columbian South America has traditionally acknowledged. And that revision, the quiet, evidence-based revision of what ancient people were capable of, is the actual story of Puma Punku. Not mystery for its own sake, but precision that demands explanation. But Puma Punku raises a question that goes beyond stone-cutting technique. Because the Tiwanaku did not build only here. Approximately 15 kilometers away on the shores of Lake Titicaca, the highest navigable lake on Earth, they built another complex that required moving even larger stones. Stones that make the question of transportation not just interesting, but genuinely difficult to answer with the tools and technologies attributed to this civilization. And what makes Sacsayhuaman, the site on the outskirts of what would later become the Inca capital of Cusco, even harder to explain, is not just the size of the stones. It is the fit. Above the city of Cusco, Peru, at an altitude of approximately 3,700 meters, stand the walls of a complex called Sacsayhuaman. They were built by the Inca civilization, almost certainly in the 15th century CE, under the reign of Pachacuti or his successors. We know this because the Inca kept records, not in written text, but in the knotted cord system called quipu, and because Spanish chroniclers of the 16th century describe the construction in some detail. We know who built Sacsayhuaman. What remains genuinely contested is how. The walls of Sacsayhuaman are built from enormous irregular limestone blocks. The largest stones are estimated by survey to weigh between 100 and 200 metric tons. Some estimates, based on the dimensions and density of specific blocks, suggest even larger weights for the most substantial pieces. These are not the largest stones ever moved by human effort, but they are among them. And what distinguishes Sacsayhuaman from other ancient sites of comparable scale is the fitting. The blocks are not regular, they are not rectangular, they are polygonal. Irregular shapes with multiple faces, each of which must fit against the faces of adjacent blocks. They fit without mortar, without cement, without binding material of any kind. The joints between them, the places where one enormous irregular stone meets another, are in many cases so tight that a sheet of paper cannot be passed between them. This fitting has survived several significant earthquakes since the Spanish conquest. Earthquakes that damaged or destroyed Spanish colonial structures built with conventional mortar in the same region. The polygonal construction, with its irregular joints and absence of binding material, appears to have been structurally advantageous in a seismically active environment. Whether this was an intentional engineering choice or an accidental consequence of the construction method is debated. Jean-Pierre Protzen, whose experimental work involved actually attempting to replicate Inca construction methods using stone tools available to the Inca, documented that the fitting process was achievable. labor-intensive, time-consuming, but achievable. The Spanish chronicles describe the labor organization in some detail. Tens of thousands of workers, organized through the Inca system of mita, compulsory labor service owed to the state, transported from across the empire, housed, fed, and directed by specialists. This was not mysterious labor. This was the organized application of human effort at imperial scale. What the chronicles do not describe in sufficient technical detail, and what experimental archaeology has not yet fully replicated at full scale, is the precise sequence of operations by which stones weighing 100 tons or more were moved from quarries several kilometers away and fitted against other stones with millimeter-level precision. The questions are real. The answers are incomplete. And that incompleteness is exactly where archaeology does its most important work. Göbekli Tepe was built above ground and buried deliberately. Puma Punku was built at altitude from stone transported across water. Sacsayhuaman was built with blocks that fit against each other with a precision that has outlasted the civilization that placed them. But the next site on this archive is different from all of them, because it was not built to be seen. It was built to be hidden. And it hid so completely, for so long, that the people living directly above it had no idea it existed. In the Cappadocia region of central Turkey, a landscape already famous for its extraordinary above-ground geology, its volcanic rock formations, its cave dwellings carved directly into soft tufa stone, lies a town called Derinkuyu. It is an ordinary small town, approximately 10,000 people, ordinary streets, ordinary buildings, and directly beneath it, carved into the volcanic rock, descending approximately 85 meters below the surface, across at least 18 separate levels, is one of the largest underground cities ever discovered. Its existence was known in general terms from historical sources. Byzantine texts reference underground refuges in the Cappadocia region. But the full scale of Derinkuyu was not documented until 1963, when a local resident noticed an unusual chamber behind a wall in his home. Subsequent archaeological survey revealed a structure of extraordinary scope. Wine and oil presses on the upper levels, stables with stone feeding troughs, storage rooms, living areas, wells, approximately 52 ventilation shafts, some of them reaching from the surface to the deepest levels, providing air and, where they intersected aquifers, water. Chapels, schools, a large meeting hall, and at the deepest accessible levels, a missionary school attributed by some researchers to early Christian communities. The ventilation system is among the most technically impressive features. Each level is connected to the others by shafts designed to provide fresh air circulation throughout the complex. The shafts also functioned as water wells, and in emergency situations, when the population needed to seal the city from outside, large circular stone doors, each weighing approximately half a ton, could be rolled into place to block the corridors. From the inside, each stone door could only be moved from within the city. Derinkuyu was not just a refuge. It was a refuge designed specifically to be defensible from the inside by a population intended to stay until danger passed. Turkish Ministry of Culture surveys estimate the complex could have accommodated a substantial population, Some researchers suggest estimates in the range of 20,000 or more, though the methodology behind population estimates for ancient underground spaces involves significant uncertainty and scholarly debate. What is not uncertain is the engineering. The ventilation shafts are real. The stone doors are real. The multi-level structure, the storage facilities, the water access, all documented, all verified, all the product of human hands working in volcanic rock with tools appropriate to whatever era of construction produced each level. The chronology of Derinkuyu's construction is not fully established. Different levels may represent different construction periods. Some researchers associate early construction with the Phrygian civilization of the first millennium BCE. Others suggest earlier origins. The question of who built the deepest levels and when remains open in the archaeological literature. What is established is this: beneath a street where people walk today, beneath homes where families eat dinner, beneath an ordinary Turkish town that gives no outward sign of what lies beneath it, there is a city built by human hands, large enough to sustain thousands, equipped with ventilation, water, storage, and defense, and old enough that the full story of its construction has not yet been recovered. The surface of Derinkuyu gives nothing away. History rarely announces itself. History rarely announces itself. It waits beneath ordinary ground until someone opens a wall. 4 sites, 4 civilizations, 4 different chapters of human history on 4 different parts of the earth, each built by verified human communities using methods that the archaeological literature has not yet fully explained, each raising questions that careful researchers continue to study, and each located on the surface, visible, or at least findable to anyone willing to look. But the 5th site in this archive is different, because the 5th site was not visible. It was not above ground. It was not carved into volcanic rock where the geology suggested underground spaces were possible. The 5th site was hidden beneath water in a country where underground construction of this type had not been previously documented, by a civilization that left almost no written explanation of why it was built, or what it was for, or how its builders, who would have needed to remove hundreds of thousands of cubic meters of solid sandstone, organized an effort of that scale without leaving a single historical record of having done it. In 1992, a resident living near the town of Longyou in Zhejiang province, eastern China, decided to drain one of the local ponds. The ponds in the area had always been assumed to be natural, bottomless, locals sometimes said. No one had questioned the assumption. As the water level dropped, stone walls appeared, then carved pillars, then stairways descending into an interior space far larger than the surface area of the pond had suggested. What everyone had assumed was a natural body of water was the flooded entrance to an enormous hand-carved underground chamber. Researchers were called. The chamber was surveyed. Then a second pond nearby was investigated. Another chamber, then another. By the time systematic archaeological documentation was complete, researchers had identified more than 20 separate man-made caverns in the Longyou area, each carved directly into solid red sandstone. The largest chambers reach heights of approximately 30 meters. Their total interior volume represents an extraordinary quantity of excavated rock.
Estimates of the labor required to remove that material run into the hundreds of thousands of worker days. Walking through the chambers, two features stand out immediately. The first is scale. These are not modest spaces. They are vast, the interior of one chamber compared by researchers who have documented the site to the interior of a cathedral. The second is the walls. Every surface of every chamber, walls, ceilings, pillars, is covered with parallel chisel marks, consistent spacing, consistent angle, repeated across every surface in every chamber across the entire complex. The pattern is not random, it is deliberate. Whether it served a structural purpose, strengthening the surface of the stone, or an aesthetic one, or something else entirely, is not established. What is established is that it required systematic, organized effort across the entire excavation, and that no surviving historical text from the region, no chronicle, no administrative record, no inscription found at the site describes why the chambers were built, or who ordered their construction, or what they were for. The silence is the mystery, not the engineering.
The 5 sites in this archive share nothing obvious. Different continents, different materials, different civilizations, different eras. What they share is subtler. Each was built by human communities whose organizational capacity, technical skill, and long-term planning exceeded what the popular account of their era had assumed. Each forced a revision, sometimes small, sometimes significant, in how archaeologists understood the people who built it. And each continues to generate active research precisely because the questions it raises have not been fully answered. That is not a failure of archaeology. It is how archaeology works. Klaus Schmidt spent 20 years at Göbekli Tepe and died with the excavation incomplete. He considered that normal. He considered that the point. The revision of the human timeline that Göbekli Tepe produced, the repositioning of organized collective effort thousands of years earlier than previously documented, did not emerge from a single dramatic moment. It emerged from decades of careful measurement, dating, analysis, and debate. Most of what we know about ancient human capability was established the same way, not through revelation, through accumulation. And the accumulation is not finished. Somewhere on Earth right now, beneath ordinary ground, beneath water assumed to be natural, beneath a hill that has never been excavated, are almost certainly structures that would revise the timeline again. Archaeology knows this. It is comfortable with it, because uncertainty is not the enemy of knowledge. It is where knowledge begins. The builders of Göbekli Tepe are gone. Their names were never written down. Their language has not survived. The reasons for burying their own monument, for covering what they built with their own hands and leaving it to be forgotten, will probably never be recovered. The builders of Puma Punku are gone. The people who fitted stones weighing hundreds of tons against each other with precision that has outlasted their civilization left no manual explaining how. The people of Sacsayhuaman left a structure that has survived earthquakes which destroyed what came after them. They did not leave instructions. The people of Derinkuyu carved a city capable of sustaining thousands of people beneath ordinary ground. They left the doors. They left the ventilation. They left the water. They did not leave an explanation. The people of Longyou carved 20 enormous chambers from solid rock and covered them with water. No inscription survives explaining why. What they all left, what none of them could have intended to leave, was the question, the same question, repeated across 5 sites, across 5 civilizations, across thousands of years. What were we actually capable of? The archive does not answer that question. It only notes that every generation that has tried to answer it with certainty has eventually had to revise its answer. Sometimes because of an excavation, sometimes because of a drained pond, sometimes because someone opened a wall. Subscribe to Hist Discover. The next file is already open.